You're listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma, and I'm your host, Trish Close. Airis, the Chef Johnson, back on the podcast. I first talked to Airis back in 2022. This was shortly after I launched Hungry for More, the podcast. And this is a little odd. That interview was posted on YouTube February 24th, 2022. I just wrapped up our interview today, which is February 24th, 2025. That alignment, right, is a little weird. Do y'all believe in that kind of thing? I know I certainly do, and so does Airis. Just one reason why I love her so much. As I mentioned, she's a chef. She's been on Food Network's Chopped twice, Champion once. She's been on some other shows, but I really wanted to catch up with her. I wanted to know what she's been up to the last few years. Really cool projects. One in particular, she's writing a book. It's not a cookbook. Very cool. Very excited for this to come out, and I'll let her tell the story. I love Airis because she has so much grit and determination, and she does not take herself too seriously whatsoever. And she has zero qualms about sharing the struggles that she's been through to get her to where she is today. She says it hasn't been easy, but it's that determination, that worker bee attitude that I love about her so much. I'm so excited to share this interview with you. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Here's Airis Johnson. Do you want to hear something absolutely crazy?
Yes.
The last time we talked, or at least whenever I posted, let me back up. When I posted this interview last was February 24th, 2002.
Get out.
Today is February 24th, 2025. Is that not crazy?
Wow.
I pulled out my little podcast book where I write all my notes, and then I looked on YouTube and I was like, when did we chat? I feel like it was a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, it was 3 years ago. And the date that I posted that interview was February 24th. And I said, well, that's just crazy, and we are meant to talk today for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love synchronicities like that.
I know. Airis Johnson, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. This is awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me again.
Airis the Chef, ATC. I love it.
Yes.
I want to find out what you've been up to, but I just want to recap again. We chatted exactly almost 3 years ago to the day. You grew up in New Orleans.
Yes, I did.
Do you get back there often?
Yeah, I was actually just there over the Christmas holidays.
Because you still have family there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, my mom, my brother, cousins. Yes.
Big family? Do you have a big family?
My immediate family is very small. It's just me, my mom, and my brother. But my extended family, I have like great aunts, uncles, lots of cousins, first, second, third cousins, lots of babies in my family.
Yeah. I would go visit my grandparents in South Carolina, and I'd go out with like my cousin or whatever, and we'd go to a party. This is when I was in high school, and he'd go, baby, don't kiss any boys because you're probably related to them. Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's weird and kind of gross, but okay, Papa, you got it.
Yeah. I would imagine like in West Baton Rouge, I'm probably related to quite a few.
When you go visit, do you call New Orleans home? Do you say like, I'm going home?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Even though I'm like almost 25 full years removed from living there, I do. Like I've actually lived in New York now longer than I lived in a place I was born and raised. So it's getting interesting getting older.
It is. Oh gosh, we could talk about that for a long time. Do you have your spots when you go home, when you go to New Orleans? Do you have your spots that you're like, I have to go here, I have to go here, I have to go here?
Not necessarily,
Yeah.
because I'm like, again, almost 25 years out of New Orleans. And so like, I'm almost like a tourist. So I have things like I must eat fried catfish like every single day. If it's crawfish season, I must eat crawfish. My mama always has gumbo in her freezer, so I must eat gumbo.
Yum. My grandma used to make gumbo and Creole. We ate a lot of shrimp Creole growing up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I love shrimp Creole.
And remind me, because I think we chatted about, you grew up with really strong women, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. My mom, my grandmother who's passed, she passed at 90. But yeah, two very strong women in the household. My mom is still alive. She's actually like an archivist in New Orleans, and she works for the archiving department in for the city of New Orleans. So she's like kind of like our family historian slash just historian in general.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
amazing. What a cool job. That's
Yeah,
I love that.
very cool.
And then I love the story, going to college, you were not big on cafeteria food. So you said you were like, that's it. Started
Yeah,
cooking, right?
yeah, yeah. Started cooking in my college dorm room, two hot plates. Decided to make some pork chops and gravy and rice
Mm,
one day, and pretty much kept on cooking from there. Kept
yeah.
on cooking. So thank you, Southern University cafeteria, for being kind of off and on with your food.
I love
Yeah.
that. And then you just recently posted on Instagram, which is how you and I got reconnected. You posted this
Yeah.
clip from our previous interview about how, you went to culinary school, you knew this was going to be your path, and that first job you got fired from, and it spun you.
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, imagine finally finishing culinary school, getting your first really, really real job at a real restaurant. It was like fine dining, I believe. And, I'm just ready to take off with my career as a young cook, ready to become a chef eventually. And imagine my surprise after only a week of being there and really working my hardest, but definitely being absolutely challenged in that one week. And but thinking I'm progressing and sitting down with the chef and him saying, like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks.
Hmm.
We gotta let you go. So that was soul crushing. I almost didn't become a chef because of that, because I was so hurt and like so confused. And I was like, maybe I made a poor decision, a career decision, and I should have stayed with business. And this is not a stable career. And yeah, I was in a tailspin.
Did
Very
you?
tough.
But you didn't stay there long. You didn't stay down very long, right?
I didn't because, New York is a expensive place to live and
Nothing
I
like
couldn't stay.
motivation, right?
Oh yeah, nothing like bills to get you going, and nothing like possible homelessness to get you back out on the saddle. So yeah, I started looking, but it was actually very hard. Like it took me a long time. I was definitely applying to restaurant jobs, like just food industry jobs in general, and I wasn't getting any responses at all. So it had gotten to a point where I'd almost given up and went to a job fair. And it was just a regular job fair with businesses there. I was ready to just go back into like the corporate world because I was just like, maybe this is not it. And spotted a guy in a tie-dye t-shirt that said Whole Foods and took my resume, said they were hiring for the kitchen,
Mm.
and I was like, great. And pretty much almost got hired on the spot. Like I think like maybe within the next week or two, I was in training. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's really important right now. I mean, I look at a lot of, especially young people trying to find a job. It's hard right now. It's really hard.
It is. It is. It is. For young people, for older people, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm good friends with a lot of professionals who have like master's degrees and like over 20 years, 15 years of experience in their field who have been struggling to find jobs like for various reasons. Like to my understanding, the the process to get hired these days. Like people are going through like five, six, seven, 8 interviews. And I'm like, wow, what are they trying to find out?
Right. How many questions do you have?
Yeah,
Come on.
exactly.
Oh man.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you posted that on Instagram, and the first word that came to mind was grit, right?
Yeah.
Like it
Yes.
determination and grit. And if you really truly want something, I mean, you
Yes.
have to go get it. You can't just sit back and wait for it to happen to you.
No, you can't. You can't sit back and wait for it to happen for you. Absolutely not. You have to have grit. You have to have determination. But I've also learned that sometimes too, you have to kind of take some space sometimes, just to like, I don't know, let things kind of manifest and like give yourself some space to to like consider like, okay, what is it exactly I want to do, and really come up with like a tactical plan.
Mm.
And in these days and times, not just one tactical plan, but also coming up with a plan B, a plan C. Like you have to have various different roads to get to one destination, I feel. So sometimes I think that most times you have to take a step back to like plan
Mm-hmm.
and think
That is
and order.
great. Great advice. I love that. Last year looking at some contracts and jobs that were coming through, and I was like, man, my 2025 is going to be super busy. And
Yeah.
then all of those contracts fell through. I just, the grants didn't come in, or, they changed
Yeah.
plans or whatever. And, my husband tells me all the time, he's like, good, because those were going to be distractions from your podcast and from this that you
Yes.
want, like the things that you're really focusing on. And so it was a take time, right? So just take a
Yeah.
step back from all of this and focus on focus on me, right?
Yes. 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 Absolutely. And sometimes life will, if you don't take a break on your own, sometimes life will give you a break.
100%. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. But no, I just love that story of grit and determination. And, I don't want to say like kids these days, but I just want to make sure
Yeah.
they are reminded like it does take hard work.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like a lot of people these days they want to skip steps. They want to go.
Yes.
I mentor a lot of people, and the when I get asked to be a mentor, like I'm like, okay, sure, I'll be a mentor. Sometimes I give a disclaimer like, hey, I'm pretty tough. Like if you can't take that, like I'm really direct, then I suggest you go another route. But it's usually not pure mentorship they want. It's a fast track that they want.
Right.
So it's like, hey, I see you doing all of these things, television and working with this celebrity chef and stuff. And like, can you just introduce me to Marcus Samuelson? Like,
No.
yeah, I'm like, what do you think is gonna happen? Like, I can, but like, then what? Like, you have no experience. Like, you have to actually work and get some sort of experience,
Mm-hmm.
period. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you just have to. And I think that that's a big point that everybody's missing right now. Everybody thinks, and I mean, in a lot of ways, like you see little kids on YouTube, they're like millionaires,
I
for
know.
playing with toys and stuff. So I get it. I get the mentality.
Yeah.
However, like, you can't become a doctor because you know somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
That shit fires me up when I see these like 20 somethings who made some weird hot dog that went viral, and now like
yes,
they're getting sponsored by some big food distribution company or something, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Really?
yes,
It's
yes.
annoying.
And that's great. But normally it's momentary. Like it's for a finite amount of time. So it's like, what are you going to do next? And like, how can you sustain that?
Mm.
You made a great hot dog one time, but like, what else? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to start a hot dog chain? Like, what do like,
Yep,
yeah.
100%. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so mentor, because last time we chatted, you were doing like virtual like cooking lessons. Are you
Yes, I
still doing
was.
that?
No, I was teaching kids, little kids,
Yeah.
from like 3 to like college age. And yeah, that was something I was doing during the pandemic, like heavily. I think everybody's back outside now, but I have done like workshops, live workshops with kids, and definitely still teaching, just not online. So
Yeah.
I said no, like no, I'm not teaching, but
Yeah.
definitely still.
Yeah, the online stuff. I mean, I still do Zoom, obviously through podcasts, but Zoom meetings
Yeah.
occasionally. And I'm so over it. I'm just so over
Yeah.
the Zoom stuff. You know, you strike me the same way. People. We're people persons.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
need,
Yes.
I need to like hug people and talk to them to their face. And yeah.
Yes, yes, big on real human interaction. Like so much so I try to like even limit my time online these days. I'm like, let's have some real life,
Hmm.
like, I don't
Hmm.
know, let's do something radical, like call me on the phone or
Crazy.
yeah, let's get nuts.
Although I have this one friend, I'll be texting her and she'll call me and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to talk to you on the phone. I just want to text
Right.
you. Ugh, why are you calling me? Why are you
That's
calling me right now? Um,
yeah.
so you said mentoring though.
Mhm.
You're doing some mentoring for like younger people or
Younger, older,
Mhm.
people who've chosen culinary as a second career.
Nice.
Lately, I've been having a lot of conversations, and I'm thinking about turning this into a business with chefs who are being cast for TV shows, food shows,
Okay.
competition shows, and people have been reaching out to me, like trying to get advice during various stages of the process, whether it's the casting phase or I'm actually on a show. Now what? This is my first time. Like, what do I need to do? So, yeah,
Cuz
been having
you were a chopped champion,
Chop Champion. Yes, Chop Champion. I've been on Chop twice, beat
right?
Bobby Flay. Most recently, at the top of last year, I was on a new show called 24 and 24, Last Chef Standing, which was a really wild show.
How far did you make it on that one? I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, the first round, they wiped out like 12. They half of us. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's
What
a pretty tough show.
what was so challenging about it?
It was for me what was challenging, it was like the biggest production I'd ever been part of.
Hmm.
It was literally like 24 chefs and they didn't tell us much during the casting process. And when I got there, I started seeing like all of these really famous chefs that I admired from like other competitions like Iron Chef and Top Chef. And I'm like, wow, like that's so cool. What are they doing here? Then it was time to film, and I realized we were all competing against each other.
No, really?
Yeah. So,
That feels pretty good, right?
it does. I mean, it did after the fact, after I had time to think about, like, oh, I was there because they considered me like at
Right.
this level. But during it, I was like,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a lot, yeah. And I hadn't had much time to prepare for it either, because I had been consulting in a restaurant for like the last 8 months prior to that. So I was just like in a different headspace, and it was something.
Totally.
It was something, yeah.
What is it about? What's the, you know, you said the production for this show, but like Chopped, for
Mhm.
instance, because you are champion twice, no, champion once or champion twice?
Champion once, and
That's
I,
right.
I was on, and then I went on to Chop Champions, and I made it to the final round, but didn't make it
Is
to to win.
is there is there like a formula to this? Is there, what's your own advice that you follow when you're on a show like this?
Ooh, my own advice. I mean, my own advice, and advice that I give is like, one, during the casting process, like if a casting director reaches out to you, like they've already researched you and they've found out everything that they could possibly find out about you online. So once they call you, it's not so they could find out more. I mean, of course they want to find out more,
Right.
but they want to see how you present on camera and they want to hear how you're able to articulate your own story, basically.
Hmm.
So when I'm on camera, on TV or whatever, I understand the production process and I understand the editing process and I understand that most of these shows they pick a cast with like a storyline in mind that they want to tell, and you're
Nice.
just a cast member in their production. I like to take control of my own narrative and answer the questions in ways of like, this is how I want my story to be told. So no matter how they edit this, like I'm not going to give them too much
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wiggle room to tell their story. I'm responsible for my own story. So that's one bit of advice I give.
That's
And
good.
then as far as cooking, I just tell people like you really need to know how to cook. This is not your time to make a little pretty one dish that you're going to take a picture for Instagram for. This is like the real deal. And like the people that you're cooking against, they can also cook too.
Yeah.
So like you have to be able to think really quickly because things are Murphy's Law, like things will definitely not work out and you're going to have to be able to think fast on your feet and pivot, and in order to do that you have to really know how to cook. Like you have to be able to think like, oh man, I decided I wanted to braise this piece of meat. It's a tough cut of meat. I only have 20 minutes and it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get it tender enough in 20 minutes. You need to be able to think quickly like, well, what am I going to do to make this edible
What do you
for
do? What do you do?
I mean, it's a number of things. Like braising, like a lot of time on sets they'll have like a pressure cooker. So that's always a good idea to get something in a pressure cooker because that could like, maximize your time. Another thing is to just take whatever cut of meat it is and slice it like really thinly and cook it very quickly as opposed to for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could slice it thinly and then try to still braise it and get it tender faster. So, a
You
couple of
you
things.
have to be on your toes.
You do, and you have to be on your toes while you have like 5 million cameras in your face, possibly somebody trying to ask you an interview question at the same time. and
Yeah, because don't
and
they try to talk to you on Chopped, right, while you're doing it?
they definitely
So I
do.
would be like, not now. I'm busy.
Yeah, they definitely do. The cameras come like this close to
No,
you.
no.
Like it's a lot.
You really so being on your toes, but you really have to kind of go through your files, right? Your brain files of like, okay, all right, I have this. What am I going to
Yeah.
do with it? And
Yes.
like looking like all the tricks, all the things that you have up your sleeve, you have to pull them out.
Yes. Yes. And you have to be able to do it quickly. And a problem comes in is, well, what if you don't have any brain files? And that's when we talk about the people who don't want to work and they just want
You don't
to.
have any brain files.
Yeah. Your brain files consist of the shrimp and grits that you took 5 hours to make at your house and did like a semi-professional photo shoot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it like that's your file, not like, oh, 5 million things you could do with shrimp. Like, oh, I could blend shrimp, I could make shrimp paste, I could do this, I could do that. If you don't have a file to refer to, you're in trouble.
I love that. So then people have been reaching out to you for asking for advice to be on these shows.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I think it's a blessing. I think it's cool that I've gotten to this point
Yeah.
where I could, you know,
Um,
have
the consulting that you did for the restaurant, just like what did that look like? Just like consulting with the menu or the restaurant in general?
So I consult with a couple of different, well, I have consulted with a few different restaurants, and so the request is always different. Sometimes it's a restaurant that it's brand new, not
Right.
open yet, and so they'll ask me to do start to finish, like create a menu, create systems in the kitchen, like to get the food out and everything like that, and organized and stuff like that. Or I'm a fixer. That's a restaurant that's already open. Somebody else has already created something that's just not working for the restaurant.
Mm,
And then I get called like, hey, can you fix this? Can you come adjust our menu, make additions to our menu, train our staff, retrain our staff,
Wow.
create new systems. Yeah.
Heiress to
So,
the rescue.
yes. It's tedious.
I'm sure.
Tedious.
Getting back to that thing you said about the casting directors, they've already looked you up.
Mhm.
Someone who I've interviewed in the past said this, like a TV personality. If a
Mhm.
producer, like, don't worry about, how'd they put it? A producer will find you. If they want you, or
Yes,
if they want you on the show, they will find you. They're good
absolutely.
at that.
Absolutely. That's their whole job. Like, yeah.
How were you discovered in that way?
Well, I think first it was like kind of like once you're on one show, you kind of like in some sort of like an ecosystem of television.
Yeah.
So I think after I did Chop the first time and won, like Chop definitely called me back again within 6 months after that. And again, it's about a bunch of things. It was like one, I won, but then also like other shows call you because I feel like the producers and like these different networks, like they talk to each other,
Yeah.
so they want people who are easy to work with, who they think look good on camera. Also, things that we're not privy to, ratings, like how well your shows do. Like my Chopped episode, it aired originally in 2017, and it still gets played.
That's so
Still
rad.
gets
That's so
played
cool.
with like, yeah, with all the other shows too. So I think it has a lot to do with, like a couple of things. Like I said, like if they like you, that's 1 through 10. Like you're easy to work with. Like I'm not a diva on set. Like I just go in, do what they say, stand where they told me to stand, and you know. And
Mhm.
yeah, but I think it's just that like you just get into kind of like an ecosystem, or if they're searching for a very specific thing online. Like now it's really easy. Like you could just go into Instagram and type chefs from New York and find everybody, or Google,
Right.
you know.
For sure. Do you think, because you
Yeah.
were saying too, they know your story, they know all these things about you, and I'm a big advocate for storytelling. Like in
Yes.
marketing, especially if you have this business, like tell me your story. It keeps me coming back. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
obviously love your story. And so do you think that plays a huge role into it too?
I think so. Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think your story needs to be able to be found somewhere
Yeah.
online to even pique somebody's interest. So, Food Network is great, but honestly, like anything smaller than Food Network, if somebody just wants you to talk about your life, talk about your experiences, definitely like take that opportunity. So, Food Network wasn't my first time ever like doing anything. Like I definitely done a bunch of things prior to that, even written like my own articles for magazines and stuff about food.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta have a footprint out there.
You have to. You have to get your
Yeah,
name out there. I mean, if that's what you want to do ultimately, right?
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you have to get it out there. And I love that you said you're not a diva, which I know. I know that about
No.
you. I can just tell. I'm the same way. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
This idea of like, I'm not the queen bee at this job that I've been in for a long time. I'm a worker bee like everybody else, and you have to be the
Yeah.
worker bee.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like humble yourself because there's always something to learn. No matter how much you know, there's always something to learn. Like I learn from my students every time, like every single time. Like especially now, like, students like when I was in culinary school, we didn't have like access kind of to the internet where we could just look up at different chefs' plating styles and cooking techniques. So now these students are coming into culinary school with like some sort of knowledge at some level.
Yeah.
So, they know things, they're doing things. Like we always have stuff to add, but there's always something to learn. So you have to enter situations humble, no matter what your experience level is, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you 100%. Like I never had time for other divas, and I certainly didn't have time
No.
for myself to be a diva. I was like, listen,
Right.
we have other important shit happening, guys. Like, just
Exactly.
don't have time for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It is. It is exhausting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are consulting, you are helping people out who want to be on shows. What else is going on with you?
I've been writing a lot lately, writing a book about my culinary career that has recipes as antidotes to the stories. So
Oh, I love this.
yeah, so not necessarily a cookbook. Everybody's been asking me for years, like, oh, when are you gonna do a cookbook? And I'm like, everybody does a cookbook, and people get mad in cookbooks when they have like these long stories. They like, oh, all I want is the recipes.
Mm.
So I'm like, oh, I have a solution to that. Like, go in the opposite direction and just let the recipes be like surprise, you
Oh, I
know?
love this. How did this like come to you? Like, I mean, was it like a light bulb moment where you were like, I'm going to write a book?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been like a suggestion, and it's always been in the back of my mind. Like, wow, I've had some real wild, crazy experiences in the food industry, and like, I should probably write all this stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and so it was just about having like space and time and opportunity to be able to like really start
Yeah.
getting to it and writing.
Amazing. What kind of recipes are going to be in this book?
So just starting out from like I'll give you an example of like starting out from day one, maybe like the first thing I ever tried to cook at home. Like I don't know if you have rallies where you live.
Mm-hmm.
Rallies?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fast food burger
Mm-hmm.
chain.
Yeah.
But like Rallies was a big deal in New Orleans when I was in high school. And like Rallies fries, like the seasoned fries, like
I
I love
know.
those. Love
God.
them.
Oh my God.
So I tried to make them at home and just kind of took like some raw potatoes, cut them up, put them in a brown paper bag with like some flour and seasoning, shook it up and fried it. And of course, it was an absolute disaster. So in the book, I tell that story, but I have a real recipe for like Cajun seasoned fries. And so it's stuff like that. Another thing I made when I was like a teenager, still not even thinking about being a chef, was like Rice Krispie treats. But I don't know how I read the recipe, but I put everything in a pot. The
Oh
the
no.
marshmallows, the Rice Krispies, and just cooked and cooked and cooked and cooked it. And yeah, that didn't work out either.
Oh man. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking, what you are such a great example, not only for young people, but advice. Like you have been through, you have those people where everything's worked out for them, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that ain't me, and that's not you, right? You have
No.
all these learning lessons, and that's so
Yeah.
great to share.
Yeah, I've definitely been on the road less traveled. For real.
So where are you in the book writing process?
Just beginning. I'm about like 5 chapters in.
Nice.
So just beginning and trying to stick with it because it's also like a very different type of energy than like chef life. Chef
Mhm.
life is go, 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 go. I'm standing, I'm moving for like 12, 13, 14 hours a day. And writing is just me sitting at my desk
Yeah.
and typing.
Yeah.
And so it's different worlds. So I think I would be much closer to being finished if I just have to kind of rewire my brain a
Uh,
little bit.
yeah, absolutely. I'm taking because in these podcasts I ask the final three, what's the best advice you've ever been given? And I'm
Yes.
taking those answers and compiling those into like a book.
Okay.
But
Oh,
revisiting
that's
some of these
awesome.
interviews, it is you're right. It is a different part of your brain. Now I can go on a
Yes.
shoot and I can do video production and I can edit and I can like jump in and do all these things, but it's like you sit down to write and you're like, ugh, I'm such a procrastinator. I'm like, what else?
Yes.
What else can I do today besides sit in front of my computer and write?
Yes. I'm like, let's see what's going on Netflix. Let me go to another tab.
Uh,
So sad.
well, that's amazing. I'm definitely look forward to seeing that when it comes out, and you'll have to come back on the podcast when the book comes out. We'll
Absolutely. And
promote it.
something else fun that I've been working on that I'm writing a little bit faster is a cartoon.
No way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's a adult cartoon, adult like HBO Cartoon Network at
Love
night
it.
kind of adult, not adult like,
Yeah, yeah.
not Pornhub.
Not porn, but
Yeah,
adult cartoon. Got
not
it.
that adult. Yeah.
What started this?
Um, just had kind of an idea with a old friend that's an illustrator. Once upon a time, and he came up with like just a title, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I kind of just took the title, I developed all the characters, and like just started writing like a pilot episode, and just based off of so it's like about a chef staff, like a kitchen staff in a restaurant.
Love it.
And they work in the restaurant by day and by night. And then after service is over, they solve crimes.
Oh my God. I
Yeah.
love this. I love this idea.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Smarty Pants, what can you not do? Seriously.
I mean, a lot.
Look at you. This is amazing. Well, congratulations on all of that. That's so exciting. And
Thank you.
it keeps your brain moving, right? When you're
Yes.
tapping into all these different skills and talents and then you find
Yeah.
like, oh, I really enjoy writing this cartoon or I'm really loving these chapters. You go back and read the chapters that you've written and you're like, man, I'm okay. I'm pretty good. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like every time I reread the pilot episode for the cartoon, I crack myself up. I'm like, oh, like, girl, you're so funny.
Oh my gosh, my husband makes fun of me so much because I'll pull up something and I'm cracking up. He goes, "What are you laughing at?" And I'm like, "Me. I'm just
Right.
funny.
I get it.
I'm cracking
I
myself up."
get it.
Oh, I love
But
that.
I always say like people who are creatives, like anybody who's creative in any way, shape, form, or fashion is never usually like a one-trick pony.
Yeah,
It's like people who sing, like you find like a lot of like recording artists, like they draw or paint or
hmm,
do something else, like some other medium. So, in my mind, I'm like, it's normal. It might not be normal to other people who just know me as one thing
sure.
as a chef, but to me, I'm just like, oh, I could be a chef one day, be a writer another day, be an architect another
Hmm.
day. Like, sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And then I just feel like I don't get bored.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't get
It's,
bored with
it's
it.
too much. It's too many things happening in the world to get bored.
Yeah,
Too many things you could do, rather.
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
But you are still cooking, right? You cook like all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, all the time? No.
No.
Most of the
Okay.
time, yes. And as far as like in the culinary field, what I've been doing the most over the last couple of years since I spoke to you, what has been consulting.
Okay.
So like consulting for like a food truck, a couple of restaurants, one restaurant for Marcus Samuelson in the city, last year a restaurant in Brooklyn. So yeah. So been doing those like extended consulting projects.
Amazing. And
Yes.
doesn't that feel good when people ask like, "Hey, can you come on over and consult and help us out?" That has to feel amazing.
It feels amazing slash anxiety inducing.
Yeah. Okay, that too. Okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
I've been talking about this a lot lately with friends and coworkers, and do you have a level of success? Like I joke sometimes like, "Oh, if I got an assistant, that would be my level of success. I've made it."
Mm,
Do you
yeah.
have do you have any sort of like level or anything where you're like, I've made it or I'm successful because of this?
Absolutely. Like when I absolutely don't have to cook my own food anymore, that'll be like a level of success for me. Like, for instance, I'm talking professionally. Like, say you invite me somewhere to be like the chef,
Uh-huh.
and I just come with my team and I'm the chef and I'm looking nice and presentable like I am now and never breaking a sweat because my team is handling everything. They're cooking all my recipes, doing everything I asked them to do, and all I have to do is show up and smile. That's
Amazing.
yes.
Do you
Yeah.
think do you think you're close to that?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Like I've had some like brushes with that sort of thing, like especially like doing like television.
Mm-hmm.
Like I recorded a show with Sarah Moulton,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah's weeknight meals, and I did jambalaya, and so I did cook the
I
jambalaya like
remember.
live, but like I didn't have to cut any chicken, I didn't have to cut any vegetables or whatever. They had producers
That's
to
the
do.
best.
Yeah.
She's been on the podcast a couple of times. Is she not the most most wonderful person?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like that's I refer to Sarah as like my OG. Like she has the knowledge, like everything from cooking, but even from just like being a TV personality.
Mm-hmm.
Like I learned a lot from her. Like when we recorded her show, we hadn't really met. I don't know if we had met in person. Um too many times prior to that. And so before the show, she was just like, yeah, so tell me about yourself. And I was like, oh, what do you want to know? And, like, tell me about where you grew up, a little bit about your experience and stuff. And I'm just thinking this, we just having casual conversation, like kind of getting to know you. And then when it was time to record, and she did her introduction, and she said, today I have my good friend, Chef Airis Johnson from New Orleans, Louisiana. And she literally like just ran down my like everything I had just told her, like she had been knowing me for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that is such a pro move. Like, just utter professional. Like, it was so easy to film with her
Yeah.
and record. And I was just taking notes, like taking notes. So, yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite people for sure.
She told me about you.
Oh,
I mean, this was when I interviewed you. I reached out to
yeah.
her and I said, "Hey, who do you love out there?" And she said, "Airis Johnson, best jambalaya I have ever had, hands down."
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
But her,
That's a big compliment.
yeah, I mean, she's incredible. She's amazing. We love you,
Yeah.
Sarah Moulton. We love you.
Yes, we love you, girl.
But that tactic of hers, just casually talking to you, and then when they started filming, here's my good friend Airis Johnson. That is such a smart way. I mean, because you probably instantly felt relaxed.
Of course. And I'm like completely wowed in my mind because I'm like, we literally just had this conversation like 15 minutes ago, and it was so casual. And it wasn't like she was taking notes. And it was
Yeah,
mental notes, obviously. But yeah, I was like, this is a professional.
she's a pro. She is a pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you are as well.
Thank you.
I want to wrap up a little bit, but I have some cooking questions for you.
Okay, cool.
What do you said you're cooking, here and there, not all the time, but you are still cooking a lot.
Yeah.
What do you get excited about cooking? Like, is there any one dish where you're just like, oh, I can't wait to make this? Or,
Ooh. It's when it comes to cooking things, very random. I have random thoughts. Like this morning, I woke up like, "Ooh, I want to make some Parker House rolls," and then I kind of deducted the process a little bit, and I just made some biscuits. But one thing I made most recently, and is really a labor of love, and I actually enjoyed it, was gumbo.
mm,
And I made like a simple gumbo, chicken and andouille sausage gumbo for a catered event. But it's just such a process and like such a process of like just layering flavors. And it takes a long time, but like the end result is it's
Mhm.
just so delicious. Like, wow. So yeah, so currently, right in this moment, gumbo
Okay.
for sure. Yes.
Is there going to be a gumbo recipe in the book?
Ah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, because and then I
Yeah,
mean, obviously you grew up with gumbo, like mom
I
making
did.
gumbo.
Yes, mom, grandmother, literally like everybody in New Orleans,
Hmm.
Louisiana. Like I was just telling somebody the other day, like I know I have arrived as a woman of a certain age when I have like gumbo on constant rotation in my freezer. Like I go to my mama's house right now for no reason and she got gumbo in the freezer.
Love that.
Gumbo and red beans.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
red beans. Oh man,
Yes.
what is it
Yeah.
about red bean? They're just so
I
good.
know. They really are. Like they really are. And I can't give you a reason.
Yeah,
But they really are.
yeah. My grandma
They
made.
really
Have you heard of shell beans?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so she used to grow shell beans, and
Oh,
I wasn't a
wow.
big fan of like limas or butter beans, but
Yeah.
her
Me
shell
when I was
beans, it
younger.
just the broth that she cooked them in, and then just
Mm.
rice. I mean, just that's it. Just give me that, and I'm a
Yeah.
happy camper.
Ooh, yeah. I like it. We have similar palates. I like
Hmm.
simple things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Simple.
Especially that's when I have friends over, and they're like, "This is so good. How did you do this?" And I'm like, "Guys, salt and pepper and like
Right?
avocado
I
oil.
was actually gonna make a social media post soon about just use salt and pepper.
Do
Like you
it."
don't have to bring out every spice in your cabinet. Like,
Please. And I see this with food bloggers, or whatever they are on Instagram, and they've got
yeah,
it's like garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, and I'm just like, oh, you
yeah,
can't, whatever you just seasoned, you're not going to be able to taste it.
you're
Sorry.
drowning it out. And then also when they start to use a lot of like blended seasonings, like multiple, I'm like, your sodium levels, like you have a stroke. Like, I don't want to taste this ever.
Someone was making like a steak sandwich and they put like steak seasoning on it, and I'm just like,
Mm,
honey, just salt and pepper.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
That's
please
it.
please do a post about salt and pepper.
I will.
Educate some folks out there.
I
You
will.
also got fired up over olive oil. Was it you got fired up over olive oil?
Oh yeah, I made a post about olive oil because I just got so sick of people like cooking stuff in olive oil, trying to fry things in olive oil, and it's just like it's not all-purpose oil. It's just not that at all. It's for like really using it just raw, like unheated, like for
Yeah.
salads or like dressings and stuff like that, or like really, really quick cooking, like sauteing vegetables. Like I don't suggest you go and sear some chicken breast in olive oil. Like it's not strong enough for that. Like I talked about like the smoke point, it has a low smoke point. So you heat olive oil up like too hot, like you're gonna start a fire in your kitchen. Yeah. And then to get scientific, like the carcinogens it releases that are toxic once it reaches a certain heat level. So, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you got all fired up over olive oil, but I
yeah.
listened to you. I make these like crispy potatoes in the oven, and
Yeah.
I like almost drown them in avocado oil cuz it's just so
Ooh.
good and they get super
Yeah.
crispy.
Yeah.
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 So
Ooh,
I
that sounds good.
yeah.
Now, if you're doing that, you could use olive oil, you know? Like, even if you like, and if you do like crispy potatoes sometimes that are peeled, you can boil the potatoes first
Mhm.
and get them cooked and then toss them in like some herbs and olive oil
Yep.
and garlic and put them in the oven and woo.
So that's exactly what I did. I parboiled
Nice.
them with lots of
Hmm.
salt, put a cast
Yep.
iron skillet in the oven so it's super hot,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
added some oil. And I did finish them with like olive oil because I wanted that like freshness on
Ye-
the potatoes.
Yes.
Damn, they
Yes.
were good.
Ooh, that sounds good. I'm
Right?
hungry. Yeah.
Okay, so one of your favorite things to cook is gumbo. What do you
Yeah.
always have in your pantry? Like, what's like, oh, I'm out of this. I need to go. Like pantry staples.
Eggs and breakfast sausage. Yeah, eggs and breakfast sausage, and some combination of something to make pancakes and oatmeal. Like breakfast is like my,
You're a breakfast girl.
yeah, I'm a breakfast girl. Any time of day. So as long as I have things to make breakfast, like I'm like, oh, I'm fully stocked with groceries.
You're
Like,
good. Good to go.
yeah, yep.
My grandma would make, we had country cured ham all the time. Like
Ooh, I love
soup,
your grandmother.
salty, right? And
Yes.
she would even like rinse it. She would rinse it off like
Ooh,
some of the salt and it was still super good. And
yeah.
grits, obviously, of course, and red eye
Hmm.
gravy.
Ooh, now
Mm,
red eye gravy, that is a real Southern thing, not a New Orleans thing.
nope.
Yeah, so that's not something I grew up having, but something that I heard of, but like never had it. Like
Yeah.
my grandmother would mention it, but she never made it.
Isn't that
Ooh,
funny? Like just
yeah,
different, especially the South. And I know there's other obviously regions in the country where they make similar things, but they, their version of it is a little different or whatever. But grits, like grits in the South, everybody has their own way of making grits, and of course,
yes.
theirs is the best. Their technique is the
Yeah,
best.
everybody's grits, everybody's potato salad.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you put mustard in your potato salad? Ugh, gross.
Right. Yeah. But
Yeah.
in some cultures, like in Haitian culture, they put beets in their potato salad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It
So
gets in.
interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and we were a big barbecue in South Carolina. It's vinegar based
Yes.
barbecue.
Right.
And
Yes.
I just learned my uncle, who's amazing at it, he like, he put a little mustard in his barbecue sauce. And I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
excuse me? What?
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody this. Like, right?
Yes.
It's going to be
Like what
riots.
right? Like you reinventing the wheel. But yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I actually study too, like barbecue and like smoked meats and stuff and the
Mhm.
differences in the regions, like Texas style, South Carolina
Yep.
style. Yeah.
I mean, literally, and you probably know better than I do, but there's Texas barbecue, there's Kansas barbecue, I
Yes.
mean, Alabama, Missouri. Everybody has like their
Yes.
own way of doing barbecue,
Yes.
and they're very
Yes.
strict about it.
Yeah, they don't play like
They
but I
don't.
respect it. I respect it because in New Orleans, like we don't play about our food.
Nope.
So yeah,
Thank
I
goodness.
respect it. Yeah, thank goodness.
So
Thank
I
goodness.
was going to ask you to wrap up. I was going to ask you in all things, I've asked you this before, in all things food and drink, what do you crave? I mean, is it gumbo or is there just something that always sounds good to you? Like you could eat it every single day.
Fried catfish,
Yeah.
honestly. Like any way, like a fried catfish po' boy, some catfish and potato salad and peas, catfish and mashed potatoes. Like catfish is my jam.
What is it about? Is it comforting? Is it nostalgic or is it just
I think so. Like on Fridays, my grandmother, like, well, in New Orleans, like it's a largely like Catholic city,
Mhm.
and so everybody just eats fish on Fridays for the most part. And we weren't Catholic, but like my grandmother would fry catfish every Friday, and I would look so forward to it because I just thought it was the most delicious thing ever. And yeah, I just never stopped loving it. So I
Yeah.
don't know if it just reminds me of my grandmother
Mm.
but I just really love fried catfish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. My grandma, we
Yeah.
would catch super fresh shrimp and she
Ooh.
would soak them in like a little buttermilk, I think, and Texas Pete
Ooh, yes.
and then fry them. And
Yes.
I mean, I could just sit there and eat this huge plate of fried shrimp.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Yes. Your grandmother is a chef.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you did, probably just grew up with so many wonderful, amazing cooks that I've learned so
Yeah.
much from.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I told you before, my grandmother would let me peel and devein shrimp and pick the tips off of green beans, and that was pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like, I had a like excellent flavor memory. So I just memorize the flavors. So like some things I cook and my mom will taste it and she'll be like, wow, that tastes just like your grandmother's.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, because that's crazy because she definitely never showed me how to cook it. But
Yeah. I remember you saying that you just had this,
yeah,
like, you have this crazy good memory for flavor.
yes, in general, yes,
Well, I mean, honey, that's helped you out a lot.
it has.
Yeah.
It has. Big time for sure.
Because that's a
Big,
big food thing, right? Like you have this like nostalgia about, oh my gosh, this tastes just like, fill in the
yeah.
blank. And it's the ratatouille moment. You're instantly pulled back to your 8 years old or 10 years old and you're at your grandma's table.
Yeah, or even adulthood. I was
Mm-hmm.
at one restaurant consulting and like the chef he had like a savory seafood waffle on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
And the chef just like they just couldn't get it together like what he wanted. They thought it was crazy or whatever. And I came in and I listened and I tasted and I'm like, oh, I know what you're trying to do here, like okonomiyaki, which is like a savory pancake in popular in Japan.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. And he's like, exactly. The other chefs are like, what? Like, but I'm just like, you gotta eat food, and you gotta like
Mm-hmm.
know some stuff, but then also like you have to create a food memory and stuff. So like again, those files, they got to be vast.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, I adore you. I love your story. I
Uh,
love talking to you. I feel like we could probably chat about food and grandmas for another half hour or so, but
yes.
and
Yes.
I'm
I
just
just
so
want to call you.
stoked. I'm so stoked to hear you're writing this book. This is amazing.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited about it. Excited and nervous because I'm
Sure.
like such a private person, but you know,
Well, we need
gotta back
more
off.
Airis. Give it to us.
All right.
But seriously, I'm going to keep in touch with you because I want to know when this book is coming out. I want you back on the podcast so we can promote it, get people
Awesome. Thank
get it
you.
in some people's hands. But thank you so
Yes.
much again for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you.
You've been listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma with me, Trish Close. You can watch this podcast and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Just search Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma. You can also listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.